I watched a haunted Mexican TV series and discovered a cursed secret that haunts viewers forever. I never should have opened that door the moment I did. I felt a chill wrap around me like a freezing fog. It was just another Friday night, me curled up on my sofa with a blanket and snacks, ready to watch the latest episode of La Ley del Más Allá. A harmless horror show, they said. Just some cheap thrills, right? But oh, how naive I was. The TV screen flickered on, casting an eerie glow that danced across my living room. Shadows reached out from every corner, stretching as the light morphed into shifting figures. The air grew heavy, suffocating me with an unseen weight. Whispers threaded through the silence, hissing unintelligible words that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I leaned closer, heart racing. Something in the show felt different this time. An unsettling distortion in the sound, an ominous pause before the characters spoke. An actor, with hollow eyes and a grin that seemed too wide, could almost see through the screen. His voice slithered around me, thick and sticky. I could smell the musty air of an old crypt, and it twisted my stomach with anxiety. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed behind me, snapping me back to reality. My breathing quickened. The blanket slipped from my shoulders, pooling around my feet. I turned, scanning the darkened room. The walls felt closer, as if the house itself was shrinking, closing in on me. "Come on, it's just the house settling," I whispered to myself, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. A shiver crept down my spine, tightening my chest. I could hear the sound of something dragging faintly, like fingernails on wood. No, I wasn't alone. There was movement, glimpses of shadows darting across the edges of my vision, always just out of reach. My eyes darted, hunting for the source of my fear. It felt like I was caught in the show, a character in my own horror story. Each thud, each whisper, drew me deeper into something I didn't want to embrace. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the TV screamed. The show went static, and in that chilling moment of silence, I saw it. A figure, cloaked and leaning against the doorway. Its face was obscured, but I felt its gaze piercing through the dim light, searching for something or someone. My breath caught in my throat, panic flooding my senses. Just as I opened my mouth to scream, the figure took a step forward. The door slammed shut behind me. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air crackled with an electric anticipation, each heartbeat echoing like thunder in the suffocating darkness. The cloaked figure stood still, a sinister silhouette against the flickering light of the TV. I could almost hear its hollow breath, and dread flooded my veins, freezing me in place. What did it want? "Go away!" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling. It felt inadequate, swallowed by the growing darkness. The whispers that had filled the room shifted, twisting into a cacophony of mocking laughter that seemed to emanate from the figure itself. More rushes of icy air swirled around me as I stumbled backward, heart racing like a desperate drum beat. Then, without warning, the figure lunged forward, and I was overtaken by a wave of vertiginous terror. I'd barely had time to register the room shifting, the walls pulsating around me like a living organism, hungry and waiting, toying with me. Just when I thought I couldn't sink back any further, I tripped over the edge of the sofa, landing harshly on the floor. As I looked back toward the TV, the screen pulsed with images I had never witnessed before. Faces contorted in pain, trapped within a nightmare, their eyes pleading for release. My gut twisted as the whispers turned into screams that were all too real and too personal. These were not merely actors. They were victims, their souls entwined with the screen, their agony a part of something far bigger than I could comprehend. I scrambled to my feet, dashing toward the door, but the moment I touched the handle, an icy chill snatched the breath from my lungs. The whispers grew louder, an unintelligible chant wrapping around my mind like a serpentine coil, squeezing until everything but fear faded. What had I done to deserve this? Before I could pull the door open, the TV grew silent, and a figure appeared on the screen, its grinning face now blending seamlessly with the fabric of reality. The eyes felt alive, pinning me down, making every muscle in my body scream to run away, while my feet remained cemented to the ground. "You've invited us in," it hissed, the voice a gravelly echo of all the cries I had witnessed. "You cannot leave." In that moment, I felt an overwhelming weight pressing down on me. My thoughts scattered as fear subtracted all logic. I turned back to the figure now advancing from the TV, movements slow yet deliberate. It was stepping into my world, and I was helpless to stop it. Suddenly, the room trembled violently, the very foundation cracking beneath me. Pictures shook from the walls, falling to the ground like shattered dreams. Shadows filled every crevice, undulating in a sinister dance. The floor beneath me glowed for a moment, the slick surface reflecting odd shapes that morphed into skeletal hands reaching out to grasp me. "Help!" I screamed, my voice torn between defiance and surrender. But it was snatched away, enveloped by the sound of my own heartbeat now drum-like and primal. Almost as if this new world was shifting me into its embrace. I needed to escape. With a shaky breath, I turned back toward the door. But it wasn't just the figure. The chanting had transformed into a ghastly symphony, an ominous anthem of despair that reverberated through the very walls of my home. Then I saw a flash of movement, another figure stepping out from the corner. A woman, wind-blown hair and hollowed cheeks, moving slowly yet purposefully toward me. Her eyes were pools of darkness, an abyss I couldn't look away from. She reached out a hand, fingers long and skeletal, beckoning me with eerie grace. "Join us," she whispered, her voice a soft caress that carried a knife edge of threat. It was like her words had become serpents, winding their way around my mind. "You are ours now." In a desperate act, I flung myself toward the door, screaming as the room seemed to close around me, the shadows reaching, clawing for my back. My fingers gripped the handle, twisting harder, and then crunch. The screech of wood shattering reached my ears. My heart plummeted as I felt the chilling breath of the engulfing darkness wrap around my neck, holding me fast. The door splintered as it burst open, revealing not the safety of the hallway, but a void endless and yawning, the essence of despair spilling out in billowing clouds. And then the whispers stopped. The suffocating hush wrapped around me like a cocoon, first inviting, then suffocating. I risked a glance back, the figures already merging into the darkening edges of the room, their mouths stretched in unholy glee. As I stepped into the void, the world around me dissolved, losing shape. I wielded my last grasp of reality, clenching my eyes shut, praying against the inevitable, when I felt a chilling caress of countless fingers sliding over my skin. "Welcome home," they murmured as the darkness cradled me into their cold embrace. And then a scream erupted from the hallway, piercing through the silence around me. A voice I knew all too well. A voice I had invited into this cursed secret once more. The darkness enveloped me, a suffocating shroud that choked off my breath, as if the very air had turned malevolent. I squeezed my eyes tighter, willing the claustrophobic void to relent, to reveal a semblance of sanctuary. Yet despite my own desperate thoughts, I could still hear a distant scream fading into the hollow of the void. It wasn't just a scream. It was a shattered echo, lingering like ghostly whispers of the past. "Lose!" I called out, my voice trembling in the oppressive nothingness. The name felt like a lifeline tossed to the chaotic winds that surrounded me. I would find her, I must. But the infinite blackness held no compass, no guiding star to navigate its cold expanse. With a tremble in my hands, I opened my eyes. A mistake. Reality warped. Faces flickered in the black, both familiar and yet grotesquely twisted. They were people I cherished, some long gone, their smiles warped into agonized expressions. My heart sank further with the realization that they weren't simply figments of my mind. They were trapped, binding me in their shared despair. "Help us!" a voice rang out, one that wasn't my own. The words dripped with sorrow, a pleading that sank into my bones. I could barely grasp what had manifested before me. Were they memories? They were bathed in a spectral glow, moving closer and drawing me into their pain. "Luz, where are you?" I shouted again. The power of my call faded, overpowered by the visceral anguish whispering around me. Suddenly, a cold gust whirled through the void, pulling at the edges of my being. I hissed as the skin on my arms prickled. The air felt alive with anticipation, and I stumbled backward, panic rising. Just when I thought the shadows of this space would swallow me whole, a light flickered, a fleeting shimmer off to my right, a semblance of hope amidst encroaching despair. I dashed toward it, gripping the edges of uncertain sanity. As I did, laughter erupted around me, dense and dark, rippling through the air like a wild animal. The weight of unseen eyes was upon me, feeding off my dread. "Don't run," they taunted. "You cannot escape the embrace of the chosen." Ignoring the vile proclamation, I dove into the light, and immediately found myself thrust back into the room, gasping for air. I hit the floor and scrambled back, feeling the warmth of reality starkly juxtaposed against the coldness of the void. Yet it felt different. The shadows lurked closer now, wrapping around the corners, growing bolder. The room felt alive, no longer static, but breathing, shifting, and dark. The TV flickered back to life, casting an eerie glow across the room. The once familiar show had warped grotesquely, revealing vivid scenes painted with terror. The characters were no longer actors, but spectral mirrors of suffering, screaming into a silence that throbbed painfully in my ears. I could feel myself slipping under the weight of their cries, just as I felt reality close in, holding me captive in this wretched cycle. And then, as if sensing my spiraling despair, a flicker of movement drew my gaze. There, standing in the doorway, was Luz, pale, wild-eyed, and trembling. She was alive, here before me, yet utterly distinct. A spectral figure, her skin seemed almost translucent. Something was wrong. "I am so glad you're here," relief washed over me. But her expression told an entirely different story. She was not the Luz I loved. This was a broken version, trapped in a nightmare twisted by time and shadow. The moment she opened her mouth to speak, a wretched wail erupted behind her, a cacophony of voices that clawed toward me, mourning the loss of sanity. "Don't!" she screamed, but her voice was drowned, as if filtered through water. The ground began to tremble, and the walls warped, melting like candle wax, oozing toward me, as if trying to reclaim what I last held. "Luz, we have to get out!" I shouted, stepping forward, desperate to pull her away from the encroaching tide of darkness. Yet the very air around her shimmered and twisted, revealing phantoms of the past overshadowing her. I felt the pull of their anguish begin to latch onto my own soul. "No!" she cried, reaching out to me as unholy laughter surged in an overwhelming wave, swallowing her back into the shadows where the grasping fingers of doom beckoned. "You must not follow." But it was too late. The laughter and terror wrapped around my ankles like chains. "Luz!" I screeched, fighting against the growing impending doom. But even in my desperate grasp, I felt my will shaking, buckling beneath the weight of the curse that enveloped her. As she faded, the whispers crescendoed into a banshee wail, and the walls resonated with a final chilling rhythm. 1 pulse, 2 pulses, 3. until every heartbeat felt like a countdown. Suddenly the TV screen exploded with harsh light, severing the air with its chaotic intensity. Dark shadows writhed on the screen, faces screaming once more, the ones I had seen before, twisting, taunting, and drawing nearer. "Turn back now," they echoed, shrill and urgent, "or join us forever." And then the ground gave way beneath me, but instead of slipping down, I was finally lifted, enshrouded in darkness. And as the shadows receded one last time, I saw her, Luz, still trapped between worlds. Her eyes locked onto mine, tears streaming down her cheeks as her lips formed one fragile word: "Run." But in the next heartbeat, the echoes of laughter erupted with a deafening roar, time folding in on itself, and everything went black. I knew I had one choice left, a choice to defy fate or be lost forever. And then the darkness whispered back, "Welcome home." Emerging from the crushing black, I was thrust into a desolate landscape, one that felt both alien and intimately familiar. The air crackled with an eerie electricity, sending chills down my spine as I fought to comprehend where I was. The oppressive silence bore down like a weight, pressing against my ears and filling my senses with dread. Everything felt distorted and surreal, a haunting echo of the reality I had just stepped out from. Before me lay an endless street stretching into a twilight abyss, lined with crumbling houses that appeared to weep, their windows shattered like hollow eyes staring into the void. A mist swirled around me, thick and warm, tinged with the sickening sweetness of decay. I stumbled forward, heart racing, yearning for some semblance of direction or sanity. "Luz." My voice, a whisper now, betrayed the escalating terror clawing at my insides. Each footfall vibrated through me, resonating with the chilling energy that enveloped this twisted realm. A sound of faint giggle, laced with malice, dripped from the shadows ahead, far too comforting for my frayed nerves. Compelled by an unseen force, I pressed on, further down this haunted path, my mind spinning with thoughts of her. Had Luz been reborn within this nightmarish realm, or was she forever lost? I couldn't allow despair to grip me as tightly as the shadows themselves. Through the murk, I spotted an open door, the last vestige of light flickering weakly. I dashed toward it, my heart pounding as I crossed the threshold. But what I found inside made my blood run cold. The room had been transformed into a grotesque museum, hung with paintings that twisted and writhed as though alive. Each canvas captured souls tormented by time, their faces stretching and morphing as if they could feel the torment laced within the pigments. One in particular caught my eye, a woman, her features unmistakably resembling Luz, framed in an eternal scream, her hair flowing like snakes extending towards me, seeming to escape the confines of the canvas. I stumbled backward, horror clawing at my throat. The distorted laughter returned, reverberating off the walls, taunting me with echoes of despair. "Do you see her?" a voice taunted, dripping with malice. It echoed from somewhere deep within the painting, swirling around me like a fog. "We are all here waiting for you. No. I won't believe this," I shouted, desperation feeding my defiance. It couldn't end like this, not for her, not for me. I lunged forward, reaching out to her likeness, my fingers grazing the cool surface. The moment I touched the canvas, her scream erupted into the room, piercing my ears, fracturing the fragile grasp I had on reality. Suddenly, the painting shifted, sliding aside like theater curtains to reveal a hall of mirrors lined with silhouettes, their reflections twisted and grotesque. I darted through them, some images screaming silently, others pleading for release, while a thick fog of despair clouded the air. Every visage fueled my anxiety, each face familiar yet tainted, resonating with the anguish I felt intertwining with my own. "Find her," the voices whispered again, drawing me back into the labyrinth of terror. "Find her before it's too late." I was drawn deeper down the horizon of jagged reflections, expecting to find anything that could guide me back to the light, back to Luz. But with each twist and turn, the shadows grew bolder, tinged with a sinister consciousness that clawed at the edges of my sanity. They reached out, fingers brushing my skin like a soft caress, coaxing me to surrender to the darkness. Suddenly, the hall twisted violently, mirrors shattered in cascades of glass, revealing a void beyond a swirling abyss of darkness, shrieks of agony and laughter melding in a cacophony that shattered my resolve. My lungs burned as I struggled against the weight of horror surrounding me, spiraling into madness. Then I saw her again, lesser figure glimmering in the distance, beckoning me forward with frantic urgency. I took a step toward her, breathless and desperate, but the shadows lunged, a wall of dark tendrils reshaping before me, ensnaring my body and freezing my voice. "Stay!" they hissed, voices echoing from every corner. "You cannot go to her." But I couldn't lose her again. Gritting my teeth against the clamoring panic, I fought against the darkness, pulling every ounce of strength from within me. I surged forward, breaking free for a moment, and launched myself towards her. "Lose!" I screamed, but my voice faltered as the shadows reasserted their power, tearing at my very essence. "Run!" she screamed again, but I couldn't comprehend her warning amidst the mounting fear. In an instant, everything shifted. Lose vanished, disappeared into a swirl of darkness, and the laughter, the malicious cacophony rose to a deafening roar, consuming the space around me in an avalanche of despair. I stood alone in the wreckage of shattered mirrors, trapped within the wails of a forgotten countless, with Luz fading into nothingness, lost to the abyss. Then with a sickening crack the floor beneath me gave way entirely, ripping through the illusion of reality. I fell, swallowed whole by the darkness, feeling myself become a mere fragment of a consciousness teetering on the edge. And before I could scream, the void swallowed me, whispering those fateful words again. "Welcome home." In an instant, I was dragged back to the surface, gasping in a new chamber riddled with decay and shadows. A television flickered dimly, and from its screen, faces stared back at me from the show I once cherished, now twisted and warped, their eyes pleading. Time froze as I felt the sickening grip of the shadows pulling me down once more, and just as their laughter erupted into life around me, I glimpsed her reflection on the screen. Lose, trapped in the agonizing echo of that forgotten nightmare. And she whispered, "Help me." The room plunged deeper into darkness as the laughter enveloped us both, splintering my very will to fight. The edges of reality blurred as I stood paralyzed in the musty chamber, the acrid stench of mold permeating the air like the rancid breath of a long-dead creature. The television screen flickered erratically, casting pale light that danced across the peeling wallpaper and crumbling plaster around me. Faces contorted in agony stared back, each moment of their existence a reflection of torment. They were all trapped within the static hum of the cursed show that now held my attention captive. "Lose!" I shouted, inching closer to the unholy glow emanating from the screen, barely able to tear my eyes away. She was there, her face a mask of desperation. Behind her, blurred figures writhed, hands pressed against the glass of her prison, their silent screams clawing at my consciousness. An icy tendril of despair coiled around my throat, squeezing tighter as I recognized one of those faces. Elisa, my childhood friend, who had disappeared long ago, her last words echoing through my memory like a ghost haunting my sleep. "Help me." Luz's voice was a plaintive whisper that tugged at the very fabric of my being. I could feel the pull of the shadows, the weight of the cursed atmosphere threatening to drag me down again, yet I found myself drawn to tunnel deeper into the void of their suffering. The laughter crescendoed, elastic and sinister, melding effortlessly with the wails emanating from the screen. I dug my fingers into my scalp, trying to block out their cries, trying to grasp onto reality as the pressure mounted. "What do you want from me?" I screamed, the desperation heavy in my chest. "Join us," an echoing chorus mocked from the shadows, voices overlapping in malicious glee. "Accept your fate, embrace the darkness." With a surge of resistance, I turned from the screen resolute. I had to find a way to sever the connection, to break the hold this twisted realm had on me. In a frenzied exploration of the decaying room, I noticed a door nestled in a corner, shrouded in darkness. My heart raced as I approached, the wood worn and splintered. Behind it lay the potential for escape or perhaps more horrors than I could fathom. Drawing a deep breath, I grasped the cold handle, my mind swimming with fragmented memories. I flung the door open, expecting to be met with another nightmarish corridor. Instead, I stood on the precipice of a vast abyss, an expanse of churning shadows and sinister whispers that beckoned to me. In the distance, a flicker of light pierced the darkness, a beacon calling to me in the suffocating silence. "Luz!" I cried once more, my voice trembling with hope, and stepped forward. But the instant my foot crossed the threshold, the ground quaked violently beneath me. A chaotic roar erupted from the depths, as shadows coalesced around my ankles, pulling me back with a force that made my joints scream. The echo of laughter intensified, feeding the darkness like a festering mound. I fought against the grip of despair, but the shadows lunged, enveloping me with a phantasmal thirst, growing bolder, and suddenly the faces from the television materialized around me, Elisa among them, her features dark and twisted. Their mouths twisted into silent wails, a ghastly cacophony of horror reflecting their eternal bondage as they reached toward me, fingers clawing through the air. "Help us," they chanted in unison, their skin pale and fragile, eyes blackened with the weight of their torment. Each word sent a tremor of despair through my soul, as the shadowy tendrils constricted tighter. "No!" I wailed, tears streaming down my face as something primordial surged within me. "I will not yield." Gathering every ounce of strength, I ripped myself free, lunging towards the flickering light. It pulsed erratically, guiding me like a moth to flame, but I could feel the oppressive weight of the vortex trying to pull me back into the haunting. My heart thundered against the mounting roar around me as I reached for the light, praying it would break the binds of this dreadful reality. Just as I grasped the edge of the illumination, a piercing shriek erupted from the depths, a voice so familiar yet poisoned with agony. "You'll never leave," it howled, the shadows convulsing violently in response. I hesitated, caught between the door to the abyss and the flickering light, which now began to warp, swirling into visions of the television screen, Luz's terrified face, blinking back at me. "Don't look away," she screamed, her voice reverberating in my brain like a chant of death. "Fight for me." I spun back once more to face the inky void, ready to confront the nightmares that had plagued my existence as a child. A grotesque parade of phantoms rising from the floorboards, their mouths stretching into mocking grins. But as the shadows lunged toward me, I felt my grasp begin to slip. The light suddenly flickered out, plunging me into an unrelenting darkness that thickened around my very soul, devouring all remnants of hope. Just as the final tendril snatched at my limbs, squeezing the breath from my lungs, a familiar laugh echoed, catching my attention. I turned to find Luz standing inside the now flickering screen, tortured yet defiant, her eyes blazing with strength as she mouthed, "You must choose." And in that dreadful moment, the chamber shattered apart like glass, the energy exploding outward in a cataclysm of despair. I was hurled into a swirling void, torn between the echoes of the past and the suffocating pull of the cursed future. Then, in a fleeting glimpse, the horror paraded before me. A shadowy embodiment of a figure behind Luz began to form, tall, twisted, and cloaked in the whispers of lost souls. Time distorted around us, and with a chilling realization, I understood. I had been watched all along by a presence far darker than any I had encountered before. "Choose wisely," it rasped, its voice crawling under my skin as the void trembled in anticipation. My heart raced, and as I hesitated, the abyss trembled beneath me. A choice was looming, one that could either save us or condemn us forever. And just then, the image of Luz flickered in and out, colliding with the shadows, each second a heartbeat in the anxious void. I took a step, But before I could decide, the ground split apart, and a scream echoed me own blurring against the insatiable darkness. I fell into nothingness, but felt a hand grasp mine from below, pulling me deeper into the malevolent unknown. Choose or suffer. The voice echoed, a brutal reminder of the torment awaiting me. The descent felt eternal, a freefall through layers of darkness infused with chaos and agony. I grasped at shadows, grasped at air, but everything slipped through my fingers like sand. Suddenly, the pull ceased, and I was hundreds of feet above a swirling mass of black mist, coiling and writhing like a living organism. I landed hard, my bones jarring painfully, the impact stealing the breath from my lungs. Pulsating light flickered furtively above me, but every time I reached for it, the shadows below surged closer, curling tendrils lapping at my skin like the tongues of forgotten nightmares. Panic clawed at my throat. The realization hit me. I was not merely an observer anymore. I was trapped within this sinister landscape, caught in a web of curses and horrors that reached out from that cursed show. Lose! I yelled into the abyss, my voice shattering the oppressive silence. A wave of dread washed over me, as the shadows twisted and formed a voice of their own. They echoed her name back, taunting, mocking. Lose! 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 As I scrambled to my feet, the ground trembled beneath me, a heartbeat reverberating through the invisible tendrils clinging possessively to my ankles. Goosebumps raced up my arms as the whispering shadows grew louder, a whirlwind of sound swarming my ears, each voice blending into one, crying, begging, shouting, an orchestra of the damned. They were souls entangled in this wretched void, seeking to ensnare me in their eternal torment. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, to escape this nightmarish realm, but I knew better than to run blindly. I had to confront what lay ahead, the source of the darkness. Fighting the pull of despair, I took a hesitant step forward. With each stride, images materialized from the foggy depths, the faces twisted in agony, the tormented echoes of the past seeping into reality like a rancid perfume. And then, suddenly, I remembered Eliza's last moments, her edges fraying into dark tendrils before vanishing from my life. I felt the pain of her absence cut into my heart, leaving behind an empty void that mirrored the shadows around me. A voice, seductive and dark, slithered through the air. She isn't gone, you know. She merely walked into the next chapter. Join her. Horrified, I pressed my hands against my temples, desperately trying to block out the insidious whispers. No! I shouted, but it echoed back, a maniacal laughter of despair, cascading through the air like petals from a dead tree. Embrace the truth? You see, once the show begins, they never leave. The flickering light pulsed again, and in its glow, I caught a glimpse of the fabled screen, a massive expanse appearing before me, torn and frayed alongside a horizon of infinite darkness. Luza's face emerged within the glowing frame, her essence splintering through as she struggled against the invisible chains binding her. Desperation consumed me. If I could reach her, if I could draw her away from this torment, perhaps she could guide me through this labyrinth of despair. Fight! You have to fight! She screamed, her eyes blinking through the pain and agony, reaching out. And as I took a step toward her, the shadows surged violently, howling as if recognizing my resolve. They whipped around me, clawing at my flesh, their icy tendrils igniting new waves of fear. Your death will be the dawn for us. Embrace your fate. They shrieked, their cacophony rising to an unbearable crescendo. I pushed through the tumult, my heart pounding as I battled the thrumming darkness coiling around me, its grasp like ice. I won't leave you, I shouted to the flickering visage of Luz, anguish boiling in my veins. She faded slightly, and I was horrified to see spectral figures, the faces of countless others materialize at her sides, their fetid mouths screaming without sound, yearning for salvation. What do you want from me? I cried, realization crashing like a wave over me. They weren't mere victims. They were the lessons of the cursed show, each one a toll I would have to pay to save her. Sacrifices danced against the tapestry of my mind, and I could feel their spectral presence. Close, melded against my skin, their pain intermingling with mine like an infection. "Feed us!" they shouted from the abyss, their collective voice unfurling like smoke, darkening my surroundings. "Join us in the shadows. Only then can you save her." Driven by desperation, I began to resist, to fight against the grip of despair. Me memories of joy and laughter clashing against the torrent of terror encircling me. I thought of every cherished moment, every fragment of light I had lived, glaring against the darkness. But just as I felt a flicker of hope igniting within, the shadows thickened, swirling around me in a ballet of despair. The black mist erupted into a violent frenzy, spiraling toward me a storm of lost souls. In their anguished wails, I felt their dread crawling closer, and the realization sunk deep. The only way to conquer this void was to face my fears, yet none of them had a definite form. They were incessantly shifting. Suddenly, Luz's voice pierced through the din. "Choose. Choose if you'll save us." As I stood there, paralyzed, the swirling shadows stopped, and for an agonizing moment, the silence enveloped me completely. It was deafening. A single heartbeat echoed again, stronger, resonating through the void. I took a hesitation-fueled breath, blinking against the onslaught of visions before me, seeing the Melissa, lost souls, their anguished faces once more, and then everything froze. Cold darkness erupted from the void, and the sound of static flickered into life all around me, like a million televisions tuning in, each one programmed to unveil a different horror. I felt it pierce through the air, a sound so chilling it resonated deep in my bones. In that blinding moment of silence, a choice lay before me that could either release Luz from bondage or let her slip eternally into the void with the others. But before I could decide, the ground buckled once more beneath me, and the sinister figure moved in, its features hidden under a shroud of darkness, creeping toward me, a smile stretching across a twisted face murky with malevolence. "Your choice will seal your fate," it hissed. And in a chilling twist of fate, I felt the icy tendrils constrict tighter than before. Just as I prepared to scream, the void roared to life again, consuming every ounce of light around me, and the darkness surged, pulling me further down into its eternal night. What lay in the depths was unspeakable, and as I closed my eyes, I sensed the malignant presence settling in, awaiting the final choice that could determine the fate of souls entangled in its wicked grip. The last thing I heard was a chilling whisper before everything dissolved into the suffocating void: "Choose or be consumed." The echo of that final whisper reverberated in my mind, drowning out all reason, leaving me suspended in terror. The shadows churned, a tempest of wailing souls that clawed and tugged at my consciousness, dragging me into their dreadful embrace. It felt as if they were searching for something buried deep within me, something they needed to feast upon. In that oppressive darkness, isolated from light and hope, I remembered the chilling mention of a curse. A television series lost to time, its legacy steeped in tragedy, hinting at something otherworldly that devoured not just the actors who played their parts, but the very souls of those who dared to watch. And here I was, facing the remnants of that curse head-on. The oppressive silence pulsated, replaced by the distant sound of a low, guttural chant. It emanated from all directions, a sinister lullaby that soothed and frightened. The shadows shifted, momentarily parting to reveal a grotesque puppet stage, a shrine to the damned where the pale figures of the lost danced in macabre harmony, bound to their string masters. Each movement was a mimicry of life, but with a profound sorrow twisted into their very fabric. They were both marionettes and prisoners. My breath hitched as I recognized Elisa, her form distorted and ghostly, bound in iridescent strings by an unseen force. She twirled in place, her eyes vacant and pleading, as if begging me to see her, to acknowledge her torment. The embodiment of helplessness, watching her struggle like a moth drawn unwillingly into the flame, tugged at my heart. "You're still here," I called out, desperate to break the chains that imprisoned her spirit. Fight! Fight against it. But her lips moved soundlessly, a mockery of speech, and the shadows surged, swallowing my voice. They descended into a primal roar, enveloping me in an agony that transcended physical pain, a terror that clawed at my soul. It twisted through my being, threatening to expose every fear and regret I had kept buried. One shadow, darker than the rest, gained solidity and materialized before me wearing the guise of a monstrous figure with eyes devoid of light. It was the puppet master, its features shifting like a mirage. "Do you see how futile your cries are?" it crooned, the voice smooth yet gritty, each syllable dripping with malice. "This is your chance, a bargain yet unsealed. To make a choice that will change your reality forever. Let her go." I roared, channeling the last vestiges of my strength. The shadows recoiled slightly at my defiance, shrinking back, but the puppet master only smiled wider, its mouth stretching unnaturally, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Release? You do not understand. There is no release here. She craves your essence, just as you crave her. Don't you see? You are bound by more than love. Your fates are intertwined, and so is the suffering." With that, another pulse of darkness rippled through the air, and in that haunting moment, I felt the weight of countless souls pressing into me, each a whisper of despair, their memories clawing at the walls of my mind. The very essence of fear coiled around us, a shared heartbeat resonating in agony, and I realized I was being offered to the shadows a vessel of longing and pain. "Elisa!" I cried, straining against the grip of the abyss, my thoughts spiraling. "I won't abandon you. I will fight this." As my words stretched into the void, they sparked a chaotic storm, and the shadows erupted, swirling in frenzy. The ground trembled, and countless faces emerged within them, each one a token of a life extinguished, echoing through the endless night. I could barely take in their numbers, but all wore expressions of sorrow, mirroring my own dread. Then, a new figure emerged, a desiccated visage cloaked in shadows, its hand extended as if to offer salvation, tainted with the stench of decay. "Embrace the shadows, and she shall be freed," it whispered, its voice raspy like crushed leaves. "Or deny your choice, and she falls deeper into despair." The choice tugged at my very essence, twisting my thoughts, but my heart flared, igniting a resolve. Forged in anguish. "I choose to fight." I screamed against the mounting frenzy. "Release her. Release all of them." But laughter erupted, a whirlwind of chilling sound that coiled around me like a vice. The figures collapsed into haunting shadows, merging once more into that ghastly puppetry, while Eliza's look of pain solidified, the depth of her struggle amplified in the grotesque theater. "You dare defy destiny?" the puppet master said, stepping closer, the shadows swirling around it like mist. "Your choice is no longer yours to claim." In an instant, light flickered again, brief and tantalizing. I could see Eliza's eyes, wide and pleading, then suddenly the world exploded into a cacophony of color and horror, the fabric of reality tearing around me. As the scream escaped my lips, the shadows lunged, engulfing me as I felt the chilling grasp of the puppet master's hand. Time warped and twisted, stretching moments into an eternity of fear, the weight of countless souls collapsing into that shattering fracture. And just as I thought I would welcome that unending void, the darkness erupted into blinding brilliance, a light pulsating with chaotic energy that tore through the chaos, igniting the air with a resounding crack and awakening. For in that breathtaking flash, I glimpsed horrors anew, a labyrinth echoing with screams, each corner steeped in torment. I felt the shadows relinquish their hold for a dreadful instant, revealing an escape, but it came at a price I couldn't fathom. And as I teetered on the precipice between light and dark, the puppet master spoke once more, its voice a haunting lullaby echoing in my mind. "You still have one last choice. Will you join us, or shall we come for you?" The blinding light faded, and in its place, the howls of the lost pierced the air. A chorus of agony rising higher than before, threatening to consume me. The void beckoned, but I stood at the brink, caught in dread and uncertainty, grasping for a decision that could save here or doom us both. And universe within universe spun wildly, my heart pounding, as I felt darkness crawling one last time around my throat, constricting like a noose. I realized I had to choose before the final breath escaped my lips, or I would succumb to the grip of the cursed show forever. I felt my soul fray at the edges as the darkness loomed ever closer, its clammy fingers tightening around me. With every passing heartbeat, the cacophony swelled, a blend of chilling cries melding into a symphony of despair. I was tethered to both the light and the grisly shadows, the remnants of countless souls clawing at my mind, begging for release or perhaps seeking revenge. "Choose now!" the puppet master hissed, its voice a serrated whisper slicing through my thoughts. The shadows shifted, swirling in erratic patterns around me, breathing in unison as if they were one entity, circling, waiting with bated breath for my decision. I had never felt such pressure. Even in moments of life and death, there was no choice more vital than this. Instinctively, my eyes darted back to Elisa. She had ceased her tortured dance, her form frozen in anguish, eyes wide and watery like glass fragments reflecting a hellish truth I had yet to grasp. Her delicate features, once full of life, now appeared warped and grotesque against the backdrop of malevolent puppetry. I could do nothing but scream her name, the sound dissipating into the void as shadows gorged themselves on my resolve. "Your love is your weakness," the puppet master sneered, and I felt its laughter ripple through my bones, reverberating in that synaptic space between terror and torment. "I can help her, but only if you relinquish your own spirit." A wave of icy fury washed over me. Numbness ran like ice through my veins, but beneath that chill lay a wildfire of pain-lost memories that begged for recognition, fear that ground my teeth in grinding frustration. I would never abandon her, I shouted, determination igniting my voice against the oppressive shadows. I will face the darkness. I refused to break. I in that defiance. I felt a tremor of strength pulse through the chaos. It was fleeting, like a candle in the storm, but it spurred me onward. My heart raced, synchronizing with the mounting tumult around me. I willed myself to think through the confusion, searching for the key that would break the curse. "Elisa," I called, straining against the shroud of shadows. "Remember who you are? You are more than this curse. We are more than this darkness." My voice fought upward, higher than the howls of torment, clinging to the fragments of hope in the suffocating unease. Her gaze stretched across the distance of the dread-filled expanse, unfurling like a wisp of smoke. Suddenly, like a phoenix rising in slow motion, she began to glow, a faint but mesmerizing light flickering from her core, illuminating the surrounding darkness momentarily. It was not just a glimmer. It was wave after wave of memories washing over me, a kaleidoscope of laughter and joy, moments shared before this sinister plunge into madness. But the puppeteer only cackled harder at the sight of her struggle. "Hope is for the naive," it sneered, advancing to close the distance. "This is the price, your conviction against your desire. Choose to save her, and your spirit will be mine forever." I felt my heart plummet, the weight of eons pressing down, and I understood the puppet master thrived on our bond, our longing. It twisted that desire into fuel for its unending hunger. But that very connection was also our flicker of light. I turned back to Elisa, searching her eyes for a glimmer of recognition, a flicker of shared memories. What if it were possible to want both? To save her and myself? The shadows grew restless, swirling around me like predatory wisps, hungry for my indecision. I could feel the life force of many swarming in, threatening to drown me in their despair. "No!" I shouted. "There has to be another way." The air hummed as my voice shot upward, disrupting the tempest of grief. "Remember, Elisa, we have fought for each other before." The ethereal light from her began to expand, flickering bravely in the maw of crushing darkness. I knew she had to hear me, even if the silence of her torment drowned me in void. The puppet master recoiled slightly, its amusement faltering. "You are a fool to cling to false hope," it growled, yet I sensed a crack in its resolve. Perhaps there was a hint of desperation behind those shadowy eyes, a flicker of fear warped within its twisted form. "Elisa," I pressed, "bring forth the light. Break the curse together." I focused every ounce of energy on that radiant sliver of memory, of love. I could almost hear the echoes of laughter guiding me toward freedom. A warmth began to burgeon between us, a thread unfurling that could connect us against this insatiable darkness. Just then, the shadows snapped tight, hissing in discontent as I felt the ethereal surge of power washing over me like tidal waves. My breaths quickened, each inhale tinged with the immediacy of desperation and need, mixing into a potent concoction of reality. All ties that once felt frayed now vibrated with raw energy as I poured everything into that single moment, the essence of who we were, and willed it forth into the abyss. As the shadows shrieked in agony, the light from Elisa surged, battling against the smothering darkness, illuminating her figure and casting aside the puppet master's desperate form. I could see her. Her eyes were locked onto mine, pleading with strength born of untold resolve. But before the light could consume the darkness entirely, before the puppeteer could be vanquished, 1,000 howls echoed through the folds of the resentment, trailing despair in their wake. "Foolish child," hissed the puppet master, its visage twisting in fury, a deathly grip breaking against my resolve. "You have awakened them. And now you shall pay the price." The shadows began to churn with voracious anger. I heard a bone-deep crack reverberate through the ground beneath me, that thundered through the chaos, shaking me to my core. It tore at the very fabric of reality, creating a fissure in the air. From it poured a surging tide of screaming souls, their faces twisted in anguish as they arced toward me, reaching, clawing for my very essence. The light from Elisa faltered momentarily, flickering under the weight of that storm of despair, and just like that, I felt the darkness tear into my heart. The apparition of faces came rushing toward me, desperately pulling me towards the void. I gasped, my breath escaping as the shadows closed in that fleeting instant. The very choice I clung to fractured, losing control against the tide surging toward me. As their darkness engulfed my senses, I felt the chilling touch of fingers clawing at my sanity, insatiable in their greed. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came. The pressure around my throat created a near silence, even as horror erupted inside. And with the shadows drawing me further into the abyss, I saw Elisa fading, her shining light extinguishing in a whirlwind of anguish, while one last phrase pressed against my ears, echoing through my soul, winding around my fragile hope. "Welcome to the cursed theater where dreams perish and nightmares thrive. Your choice is now no longer yours." As the darkness swallowed me whole, I reeled backward into an endless night, consumed by the terror that my decision may have already sealed our fates forever. The relentless cacophony of souls crashing around me eclipsed all reason. They howled, lamenting what was lost, clawing at my mind with threads of despair. I felt my consciousness slip through their fingers, one tenuous strand severed at a time as the fray worsened. It was as if I was unraveling, untethered from reality, within the storm. Flashes of darkness and light slashed through the void, giving me split-second glimpses of horrific figures, twisted shadows of stories long buried, actors from the stage, who had once played their roles so beautifully. Now, their faces twisted in unnatural delight as they beckoned me closer, their bony fingers stretched wide against the abyss. But beneath that swirling chaos was a terrible familiarity, a dreadful sense of déjà vu that twisted my gut. The air smelled of ash and decay, like the set of a theatrical production caught in a cataclysmic disaster, where the actors could no longer unmask their true horror. The thought struck with grave clarity. I had seen this before. Fragments of memory crashed over me, recalling a night spent watching an old Mexican TV series long lost to time, a tattered fragment of my childhood. The mere remembrance sent chills skittering up my spine. It was a show so eerie it had been banished from airwaves. rumored to contain traces of reality that no one could quite comprehend. It had told tales of cursed spirits, of vengeful ghosts, who pulled the unsuspecting into their tortured narratives. I had thought it merely a tale spun for television, fictitious horror meant to amuse and frighten on a whim. With bold urgency, I fought to reclaim my consciousness, focusing on the flashes of Elisa's light that trembled against shadows, struggling to reach me. "Elisa!" The call emerged gutturally from my throat, saturated with terror. I felt weightless as the darkness grew slender around me, twisting, drawing me through a vortex of frantic souls and broken promises. "Just hold on." But then the shadows shifted, elongating into horrifying figures bearing twisted smiles parodying a tragedy long forgotten. I realized they were the characters from that series. Now they bore an insatiable hunger glimmering in their every hollow gaze. And one by one, they turned toward me, as if drawn by an unyielding pull to peel back my reality and reveal hidden truths buried deep within. "Welcome, darling," rasped a skeletal figure, its voice dripping with rancid sweetness as it slithered closer. I recognized its face. It was the main antagonist from the show, a specter known for devouring the dreams of those who dared to intrude in its dominion. "Your love is a pretty mask to wear, but it will not save you here." With every syllable, the memories surged, recalling the episodes no one could stand to watch, titled "The Lament of Lost Souls" and "Shadow Play," where torment always closed the curtain on the beloved characters. The realization gripped me. I hadn't merely stumbled into a darkened theater, I had become one of its actors. Each soul who had gazed into the screen had agreed to play this role, and now, here I was entangled in a plot I didn't write. "No. You won't take me," I shouted defiantly, willing my body to break free, to fight against the tide of agonizing faces clawing at me. The puppet master shadows shrieked and blurred, a symphony of anguish igniting the air around me. "You're all nothing but monsters. You do not own me." Yet my words were swallowed as laughter erupted from the darkened depths, a grand echoing, Russian roulette, a sinister amusement, merging with the symphonic cries of transgressed souls. I felt warmth flicker and ignite within Elisa, a light fueled not by surrender, but an ardent fury against the darkness surrounding us. "Love conquers," I whispered, tethered to that fragile ember of hope as I grasped once more for her essences. But as clarity washed through me, an unsettling revelation crept upon the horizon of my mind. How many had come before me? How many souls lost to the curse of the theater? The figures danced closer, shadows swirling in a sinuous waltz, and I saw it then. Each face illuminated by hidden light, each entangled spirit carrying the weight of despair. They weren't just victims, they were an audience. A macabre standing ovation for the darkness that fed upon their fear. My heart raced, no longer just a drumbeat of determination, but an undercurrent of chaotic sorrow. Suddenly, the pulsating energy thickened, a tidal wave of anguish crashed around me. The actors and souls approached, twisting their contorted faces closer, their breath the stench of rot and despair. "Join us," they cried in unison. One breathtaking moment melted into another as I began to understand. I'm not simply within the story, I'm part of the horror unfolding. And as the boundary between reality and nightmare frayed further, a terrible truth washed over me like a torrent. The show must go on. I felt myself drawn, pulled into their chorus, caught in the play without a script. "Elisa!" I howled, desperation clawing at my chest as the shadows pulled tighter. Just as I thought the abyss would claim me, a cry pierced through the veil, the resonating scream of love colliding against the darkness. But before I could find certainty amidst this collapsing reality, I felt the darkness shift unnaturally. Suddenly, a loud crack reverberated from behind me, a tangible slice through the gloom, and before my eyes, a portal began to churn and spin, revealing an endless expanse interlaced with silhouettes I had known, each a figure trapped within the cursed reels of that dreadful series. As they reached toward me, fingers intertwining with strands of desperation, I realized the show wouldn't stop without an ending. But the price of knowledge hit me like a shotgun blast. It was a bargain, a pact never intended for the living. And within that churning void, as light and shadow danced a final crescendo, I faced the chilling question that devoured my sanity. What price am I willing to pay? The laughter of the theater swelled around me, drowning out my thoughts, shoving me toward the portal as my vision blurred. Would I become a haunting? Or would I be the one left haunting, swallowed whole by the unfolding night? One last scream echoed, chilling my very soul, as I was thrown into the endless dark, plunging deeper into an unscripted fate that would see me eternally entwined within their cursed narrative. I found myself suspended in the darkness of an infinite void, fragments of reality swirling around me like debris caught in a tempest. The faces of countless souls wavered in and out of existence, their eyes pleading, mouths opening in silent horror as they grasped at the edges of my consciousness. Just beneath the surface of my thoughts lay the puppeteer, a malevolent entity draped in shadows who thrived on the torment of lost souls, a master manipulator who feasted on fear and despair. And oh, I gasped, wrenching away from the cyclone of dread that sought to consume me. In that vast expanse, I felt disconnected, like a marionette with severed strings, longing for something to anchor me in the chaos. And there, in the depths of despair, I glimpsed her again, Luz. She hovered just out of reach, ethereal and shimmering, her eyes wide with a mix of hope and anguish. Fight it! Her voice trembled through the shroud of darkness, a beacon shining against the tempestuous void. You can break free. As I struggled against the whirlpool of tormented spirits, I remembered every moment we had shared, every laugh, every secret. Those memories coalesced into a brilliant light within me, warring against the suffocating shadows that clawed hungrily. In this moment, illuminated by the warmth of love, I yearned to save Luz, but also questioned the possibility of my freedom. I will not surrender. I spat defiantly, pushing against the encroaching darkness that coiled around my legs, pulling like a malevolent fog. Not to you! Strength surged through me as the whispers of the tormented souls grew louder, intertwining with my resolve. Your curse ends here. The shadows recoiled momentarily, their grip faltering as if my defiance sent shockwaves through their ranks. But the puppeteer emerged, its twisted form looming over me, eyes burning with malevolence, a grotesque mockery of power. Ah, you think you can defy fate? It hissed, voice like rusted nails, sharp, painful. You are but another actor in my theater destined to repeat the performance. From the depths of that abyss, I cried out. No! We are more than just characters. We have the power to change our fate. I could feel the essence of those lost souls pulsing around me, drawn by the strength of my conviction, and with that realization, I could forge a bond through the chaos. Luz! Help me! I screamed. Her form flickered closer, eyes brightening with fierce determination. Together, she whispered fiercely, her hand reaching toward me. As our fingers met, a surge of pure energy exploded outward, illuminating the oppressive darkness with a blinding light that pierced through the despair like a spear through fog. But the puppeteer wailed, thrashing and twisting in the radiant glow. No! You cannot escape. Its voice splintered, the madness within thrumming with urgency. The shadows contorted, shrieking with discontent, swirling as they fought against the growing force of our combined will. With each heartbeat, we pushed against the darkness, our love igniting a tremor, a fissure opening in the vast emptiness. Suddenly, the portal behind us expanded, a horizon flooded with blinding light, offering glimpses of the world we had left behind, a warm sanctuary of laughter, life, and connection. Focus! I urged, feeling the energy building, the tension a taut wire. We could break through. We could shatter this cursed cycle. We will choose hope. As I spoke, the shadows tightened their grasp, launching themselves toward us with wretched force, but we stood firm, centered in the bond of our shared hearts. The puppeteer shrieked, a wailing sound that sliced through my resolve. You will be lost. Embrace your pain. Embrace your darkness. It lunged, extending darkness-ridden hands toward us, desperation palpable. But Luz's light surged, and I could feel its warmth flooding through me, a protective cloak wrapping around our struggle. Together, we shouted in unison as we faced the tempest head-on, igniting the brightness at the core of our souls so fiercely that it pushed back the shadows, blotting out their malevolence. Then it happened like the shattering of glass, a rift opened wide, swallowing the darkness into itself. I could feel the weight lifting, the hold of the puppeteer breaking as it dissolved in our brilliance. The howls of the lost souls became a crescendo, morphing into cries of liberation as they were released from the cursed theater. But just before the light consumed everything, the last gasp of the darkness lingered, penetrating my mind. You think this is the end? It whispered, a sickly sweet tone snaking around my thoughts. The darkness will always find a way to come back, and this time, it will have your essence. I faltered, my confidence shaken as I sensed the shadows retracting, with a familiar chill returning, tugging at the edges of my consciousness. The portal seemed to pulse, the light waning just slightly, and in that brief lapse, fear crept back, a reminder that the horror was not vanquished but merely waiting in the shadows. But with Luz beside me, the flicker of hope reignited. I grasped her hand tighter, anchoring my resolve once more. We will face it together, I vowed, determination surging through my veins, as the light intensified, overtaking the darkness within and around us. And then, with one final push, a brilliant explosion of radiance swept across the void, obliterating the constraints of the cursed theater, tearing down the walls of despair. The shadows evaporated into thin air, their echoes fading into oblivion. Suddenly, we stood in the familiar comfort of cozy fabric and soft cushions, the TV screen flickering off in the corner. The weight of the horror lifted, replaced by the warm glow of safety. But as I turned toward the now quiet room, the unsettling whisper lingered in the air, curling around my thoughts. You cannot truly escape. We will be watching. My heart dropped, and as I registered the reality of our freedom, an icy breath echoed through the room, lingering like a forewarning. The line between light and dark had shifted, and the shadows would always be waiting for their chance to reclaim me. Luz and I exchanged a grave look, realizing that the curse might have weakened, but it still lurked in the shadows. And just as I thought I was free, the TV flickered back to life, the haunting words dancing across the screen. You invited us, and shivers cascaded down my spine. As the final ominous truth gripped me, we never left.